Hi, I'm Pastor Kurt, and this is your 5-minute Bible study. Today, we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 20. This is the story of the birth of Jesus. Now, even if people aren't familiar with the Bible, they know the Christmas story. This story has just become a part of our pop culture. This is even in the Charlie Brown Christmas special, right? That's what Christmas is all about, Charlie Brown, when Linus has his little monologue up there on the stage reciting Luke 2, right? This is the story. Everybody seems to know the story of the birth of Jesus. Well, even though we're familiar with it, and even though we know what it means that Jesus is born and God has come to us, there are still some important things to notice in this story. Think about how the story begins. We hear that there was a census ordered by Emperor Augustus for the whole world to be registered, as it says. This is why Mary and Joseph had to travel to Bethlehem, because Joseph was from the family of David and Bethlehem was a city of David. Well, it begins, this Christmas story that we're all familiar with begins with politics. It begins with Emperor Augustus ordering this census. Now, back in that day, think about what the news would have been then. On that day, people would have been talking about the census. That would have been the big headline, right? Emperor Augustus orders census. And so the people have to go to the towns of their ancestors. This is what people would have been talking about, how it disrupted their lives, why they have to do this, all of this kind of stuff. You can just imagine the conversations that people had with each other as they traveled to these cities. They had to put their entire lives on hold simply because the emperor ordered this. This was not what they wanted. Well, of course, as the story progresses, the camera shifts, so to speak. It shifts away from the big headlines of the day to the story of this one couple making their way to Bethlehem. We hear about how they couldn't find a place to stay. Now, when you hear that there was no room at the inn, please do not think of it like a hotel, okay? A lot of times we'll think of inns as hotels, but they weren't. In that day, the word inn in Greek means something more like upper room. Think about where Jesus and his disciples had the Last Supper. The upper room in a house was the guest room. And so what it means is not that there was a no vacancy sign on the nearby hotel. It meant that there was no place for them to stay. There were no guest rooms available. So they found a spot the best they could, someplace that had a manger where the animals were. Notice that the text doesn't even tell us what the animals were. We don't hear about cows and sheep and birds and all that. We get all that from all those Christmas pageants that we've seen of kids dressing up as animals. What we hear is basically that they had to find what amounted to the street. Today, this place that people walk by or drive by and pay no attention to is the street or the back alley. Think about that for where Jesus was born. So here's this shift from this great big political scene with Emperor Augustus, but the camera doesn't stay focused on that. The camera moves to focus on this couple who are basically in this back alley, and this woman is giving birth. By shifting the focus from Emperor Augustus to Jesus, that tells us what's really important. In a way, think of it like the Lord of the Rings. Maybe you're not into Lord of the Rings or sci-fi stuff, but just stick with me for a moment. In the Lord of the Rings, we hear about these big battles and all these armies. We get like this big cosmic sci-fi fantasy battle scene, but the real story is about this one hobbit named Frodo trying to get rid of this ring. Sometimes in life, we pay attention to the big headline stories, like the big battles or what this politician said, these things that make headline news. What we hear in the Christmas story is that God is at work in the lives of everyday people, like Mary and Joseph. Everyday people who are dealing with everyday struggles, like putting their lives on hold and not being able to find a place to stay. It is in those smaller instances that Jesus comes. Which means in your life, Jesus comes there. Yes, maybe you don't think of yourself like Mary and Joseph giving birth to Jesus, but God pays attention to your life, and God brings Jesus into your life. Odds are pretty good that your life is never going to make the headlines, that most people probably have no clue who you are. Most people had no clue who Mary and Joseph were either. But it was to them that Jesus was born. And it is to you that Jesus is born. And as the angels told the shepherds, that is good news of great joy for all people. Jesus comes to you. There's your 5-minute Bible study for the day. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.